access, we're now live. It's now whether we have access or not.
Yeah.
Kevin back on?
Here he comes.
No, we're still activating the live stream. So again, you have to bear with us. It is.
We got a message that we are live.
What's that?
We are live.
We are
Yeah,
live on YouTube.
Pardon?
We are?
Yep.
We got a message that we are live.
Right.
Okay.
I'm checking the stream to confirm on a separate computer to make sure the public can see it.
Yeah.
I like the Baldwin shirt, Brandy.
You like that, huh?
Sorry about that.
Got this room above my garage. It's my pit room. So I don't know if you can kind of over my shoulder. It's all my different pit memorabilia and everything else. Of course, they went and changed the colors, and I got to repaint the darn room.
I had a pennant from about 40 or 50 years old showing Pitt in the old football stadium and everything else. And it's just something you don't see.
Hmm.
I hope you don't have the old logo though, now that they've changed back to the script.
See, here's the problem. I know the entire room is painted, and before they tore down Baldwin High School, I have a lot of an old wood floor that I sanded down and I painted the logo of the block letters with the old the not the old logo, but the Steve Peterson logo. So now I keep telling Mrs. Lutz, and so since I'm live, she'll know this now too. I have to redo the room. I have to repaint it. I have to resand the floor because I have it painted like a basketball court up here, and it's truly my man room.
Nice.
My kids and wife ran over to Lawrenceville to a taco place to pick up tacos for Taco Tuesday. They just sent me a picture of the street in front of this place.
Yeah.
There must be 500 people. So much for social distancing. Oh my heavens.
Your speech this morning is what inspired everyone.
Hey, listen, if that's all it takes, brother, I got. Yep. They've been in line. They've been in line since 7 o'clock trying to, and they put in an order, and our food was supposed to be ready for 7. So, yeah. Cinco de Mayo and Taco Tuesday.
Yeah.
But matters, there was a long line at whatever what's on 51,
Bull River or whatever.
Taco Bell.
No, the place that has the burritos and
that Mexican place.
Oh, Chipotle or Chipotle, yeah.
Yeah, there was a line, and they were all standing outside too, not in their cars. I guess they were letting them in so many at a time to pick up. And it was raining.
That place that's Old Mexico used to be a restaurant a long time ago. They used to have fake horses out front like a little corral.
Yeah.
Shows you how old I am.
Randy, where did they go?
They went over to Coronado or something like that over in Lawrenceville. Coronado.
Lawrenceville.
My older daughter Carly, she and a friend went there one time, and I like the chips and everything were so darn good. I said, well, let's go back there, and they're like, okay.
Is it Condado?
That's it, Condado.
That is a very good place.
Condado, that's it.
Lulu.
How's your business, Dave? Oh, hi, Kevin.
So this is just confirmed. Sorry for the delay. We're a few minutes longer than we had expected. The live stream is confirmed to be operating correctly right now. I'm going to be putting on at this point the screen share with the additional items for the agenda. Oops, wait a second. Before I do that, I have to do this. Then we have to allow that 10 minutes to elapse. So I apologize for our delay, but they didn't give us this training in CT director or superintendent school.
Nope.
So we
I'm
have.
sure Randy got it in superintendent school, though.
Yeah.
I got my letter at Edinburgh. He went to Pitt. They probably did do more at Pitt than we did at Edinburgh.
So now we have an additional 10 minutes?
Yes. Sorry about that.
No.
So for any members of the public that are viewing this, there was an executive session held this evening prior to this meeting in which we are and adding to the agenda, the published meeting agenda rather, the following items will be added following that executive session. They are up on the screen for your viewing. If any member of the public wishes to make public comment on these items, you have until 7:50, we'll say 8 o'clock, just to give the public the benefit of the doubt, to make public comment on these items. So follow the instructions on the screen, which are to email krice@steelcentertech.com. That would be for public comment on these voting items. Opportunity was given on the previous voting items that were posted on the website up until 3 o'clock today. Any public comment will be read out loud and become part of the official meeting record as well as the minutes of this meeting. And so we will, in fact, begin the meeting itself once the period of time, a little bit longer than 10 minutes, will be expire, and the meeting will begin at 8 o'clock. So if you would like the public comments to be included in the record of this meeting and read, please email them following those instructions. We'll be on a kind of recess until 8 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Kevin,
Yes.
this is Eugene. Can you let Jeff in as well, my friend?
Yes.
I wouldn't have let you in the first place.
How are you, my friend?
Good, Eugene. How about you?
Doing good, considering all this craziness we're going through. I'll tell you, my heart goes out to all you superintendents right now. It's a very difficult time to let any, to have this being, you being faced with these options right now. It's just insane. Hey, at least I don't have my camera on. That's a good thing, right?
That's good. Hey, Kevin. Hey, I'm actually, I have the YouTube station on my phone now. There's only about a 2-minute delay, and I just heard Eugene Pickett on me just now. So I think we're kind of up to date. We're pretty close.
Kevin, were you able to get Jeff, my friend?
Yes, Jeff was admitted to the room. So again, for any
Perfect.
members of the public that are viewing this meeting on the YouTube live stream, the items that are on the screen at this time were added after the executive session that was held prior to the meeting. Any members of the public wishing to make public comment on these items prior to a vote should send an email to the address listed, krice@skillcentertech.com, prior to 8 p.m. The meeting is delayed slightly due to the virtual participation and virtual management of tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
If it's just another reminder that we're in a recess, as there was an executive session prior to this evening's meeting. There were 6 items added to the agenda in order for the public to have an opportunity to weigh in on those. There was a period of time until 8 o'clock in which individuals who would wish to make public comment can email krice@stillcentertech.com. The meeting will begin in approximately 5 minutes.
Mr. Rice, if you're aware that I'm watching on the YouTube station. I think there were seven viewers. It's less than a minute behind, so everything's coming through quite clear, and that people have had plenty of opportunities to see and also to comment.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a separate computer with the same feed. It's about a 30-second, 40-second delay.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to give ample opportunity to ensure, that the public has that opportunity to share. But yeah, the stream does appear to be working correctly, and there appears to be some folks that are, taking the meeting in as instructed on our website. Okay, it is now 8 o'clock. And we've received no email comments from the public regarding the 6 items that are on the screen. I'm going to move to the next screen to allow for the beginning of the meeting, the commencing of the meeting with our president, Mrs. Roll.
I'd like to now call the meeting to order, our virtual joint operating committee meeting for May 5th. And I would like to call that to order. Could I please have the flag salute, Mr. Rice?
We'll pause for a moment and follow the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America and to the republic
Republic which stands
one
nation
nation
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Elaine, may I have the roll call?
All right. Mr. Pantone,
Here.
Mr. Scott. Here. Mr. Tashwar. Here. Mrs. Harris. Here. Mr. Stoffer.
Here.
Miss Johnson. Mr. Perry.
Here.
Miss Lagueros.
Here.
Mrs. Downer.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrov.
Here.
And Mrs. Rule.
Here. Thank you. Board member comments or visitors' comments on any agenda items? Hearing none. President's remarks. First of all, I would like to extend a special thank you and appreciation to all of the Still Center staff for Teachers National Day today. And I want to thank them for all their extra effort that they had to apply in light of what all has happened during this semester. It's been greatly appreciated by the whole board. I now would like to announce that we were in executive session and it was held prior to tonight's meeting. Let's see, next would be approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Who made the second?
Second, I did, Nick Alexandrov.
Okay. All, any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries as stated. Could I have a motion for the financial section for item 7.1 to 7.6?
This is David Scott. I make that motion to approve item 7.1 to 7.6.
Thank you.
Nick Alexandrov, I make the second.
It has been moved and seconded to accept all the financial items under 7.1 to 7.6. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
We'll do a roll call.
We'll have to do a roll call. Sorry.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwar, Mrs. Harris. Yes. Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. All the motion has been approved as stated. The next motion that I need, these will all be individual. The following items would be 7.7. Is there a motion to approve?
David Scott, I make a motion to approve the administrative budget.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwar,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Motion 7.8.
This is David Scott. I make a motion to approve the operating budget as presented.
Second by Nick
Is there a
Alexandrov.
second? Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Motion 7.9.
This is David Scott. I make a motion to approve the Perkins budget as presented.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Motion 7.10.
This is David Scott. I make a motion to approve the workforce development budget as presented.
There's a second.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Next would be our executive director's report. Mr. Rice.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would recommend that the board approve items 8.1 under operations, all the way through 8.2.2 under personnel.
This is David Scott. I make a motion to approve those items.
Is there a
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments?
Connie, I have a comment that delaying the 2 or 3 new programs strictly for budgetary causes and not because we don't think they're worth doing.
Well, and I think also the problem was because of the disruption in the schedule, that we thought it would be a little more difficult to get them off the ground also.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments?
I agree.
Okay, all those in favor?
We'll do a roll call.
Okay, yes, you can do a roll call on those. Yes, that's right.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Next one, Mr. Rice, personnel.
Those would be items 8.2.3. Will Elaine read those off as the executive session items?
Yes, 8.2.3 is to eliminate an administrative position. Yeah, should I read the whole motion?
Yes.
Approve resolution 01 of 2020 of the Joint Operating Committee of the Steele Center for Career and Technical Education, eliminating the administrative position of Assistant Director for Curriculum and Technology for the 2002 through 2001 school year.
This is David Scott. I make that motion.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated.
The next agenda item is 8.2.4, furlough and administrative employee, to approve the resolution 02 of the 2020 of the Joint Operating Committee of Steele Center for Career and Technical Education, suspending, as that term is used in the Pennsylvania Public School Code, Robert Frioni, an administrative employee, due to the restructuring of administrative positions for the 2020-2021 school year.
This is David Scott. I make that motion.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated.
Next item, 8.2.5, appoint an administrative employee, to approve the resolution 03 of 2020 of the Joint Operating Committee of the Steele Center for Career and Technical Education, appointing Robin White, an administrative employee, to the position of Assistant Director Principal due to the restructuring of administrative positions for the 2020-2021 school year.
This is David Scott. I make that motion.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Questions or comments?
Yes, this
Roll
is
call,
David
please.
Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Um,
Dave.
I just wanted to make a comment that it's an unfortunate thing that we have to do, but I think it's very much necessary in terms of the structure of making the structure more lean and also able to serve the districts better. in this way. It's something that we've spent months discussing, looking at all sorts of different options, and we've had both the business managers and the superintendents from the Area 5 school districts quite involved in all these discussions as well. So it's not something that a decision that was made lightly, but rather one that required a great deal of thought. And Karen, I think it will allow us to proceed going forward in the way that we need to. So I thank the administration and Dr. Lutz for their work on preparing this proposal and getting us to the position where we can be more efficient going forward, and for the work of the schools.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Laguerres,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated.
There are three more items, and this is David Scott. I'll be happy to make the motion to approve the items 8.2.6, 8.2.7, 8.2.8, which are with regards to the educational technology management agreement with Quest Tech, the school security services, and the mental health services.
I, Nick Alexandrov, second the motions.
Any questions or comments on this motion? The roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Laguerres,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carried as stated. Now, is it buildings and grounds?
Okay, hi, everybody. How you doing?
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the chiller repairs are done. They're finished. The big chiller didn't need the extra work. However, the small chiller lost 270 pounds of Freon, so that cost us an extra 2,700 on that. The new programs, all the heavy construction's done. The walls have all been opened up that need opened up in that. We're just doing down to the little things now. We have some carpet delays, some tile to fix, and all three areas will be ready to go whenever we're ready. Since there's no programs in the building, we started in the summer cleaning all the rooms, running into problems with some that still have cars and shops and stuff, but we're working on getting them out. And the cooling tower's been torn down. The parts have been ordered. I'm waiting on them to come in. I talked with Tower Tech yesterday. They should be here first part of next week. And the parking lot, everything's in for the parking lot lights. However, under the shutdown, the contractor got shut down also. He contacted me Friday that he's allowed to start back up. So probably at the end of this week, next week, they'll come in and repair the parking lot lights. And that's all I have on that.
Okay, great. We will have to do, we'll have to have a motion on the expenditure of the $2,700.
Yeah, that's in under the financial
repair?
payments.
Oh, okay. So that's already covered then.
Right, right.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have an architect's report tonight?
No.
No.
There is no
Okay.
report. There is no report, but I want to provide a brief update that Matt France from HHSDR has an appointment scheduled to come out here and meet with us just regarding some of our continued efforts to examine options to address our infrastructure issues. And that meeting, I think, is to take place. But tentatively, we're looking for the lift of the stay-at-home ban. But we have it tentatively scheduled, I think, for next week.
Okay, great. Dr. Lutz, Superintendent's report.
Yes, just to I guess concur and agree with Mr. Scott and thank you for those comments. I think that some very tough motions this evening, and none of those are taken lightly. I appreciate the board's support. I appreciate the confidence and the ability to plan and think differently, and to try to make Steel Center lean and more efficient and a more effective organization. So. Thank you for that. The past month, 6 weeks or so have been very challenging. I can just imagine from a career and technical center point of view what that looks like for online learning. Is very difficult. I'd just like to thank Mr. Rice and thank teachers. I know it is Teacher Appreciation Week, so thanking the staff for their efforts and trying to do the very best that they can in a world that is very much a hands-on world. And so thank you to all of them. Mr. Rice, again, thank you for your efforts, and much more work to be done as we continue to move through this COVID-19 world this spring and then whatever the fall may turn into. So with that, that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lutz. Solicitors report.
Mrs. Rule, just a brief report. I just want to commend everybody for your flexibility and your patience in adhering to the requirements for virtual meetings, and Steel Center's attempt to make every attempt to follow the Sunshine Law and all those and all those requirements. I just appreciate everyone's cooperation and glad to see that everyone's doing well. I'm glad to see everybody, even if it's not in the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Information items, Mr. Rice.
Yes, so this evening, there'll just be one information item that we're going to open, discuss. The other two are in for your enclosure, the two assistant director reports, but I'll be offering just some thoughts on the joint operating committee brief. I also want to echo and thank the comments that were made by Mr. Scott and Dr. Lutz regarding our restructuring decisions, and also thank Dr. Cooney for his service to the school. Again, in order to continue to move forward in the school, oftentimes difficult decisions, but those are things that we don't take lightly here. I just want to also take an opportunity here to do a couple things. First and foremost, and thank you for your very positive comments, Dr. Lutz. The staff at Steel Center, the faculty, and the whole staff. Teachers, it is Teacher Appreciation Day, but it takes a whole team at any school. And this team here is backed up by an incredibly talented and dedicated group of support folks from our instructional aides who have just been a real key to the operation during this COVID-19 shutdown, to our maintenance folks who have come in as essential workers and kept the facility actively moving forward, to our secretaries and other staff, our counselor, our work-based learning coordinator, Ms. Warbo, is doing an amazing job, our learning facilitators, just up and down the halls. This place is really full of committed individuals that care about students and are really experts and masters of their subject area. We're very blessed here at Steel Center to have the talented group that we have. So there is incredibly positive things happening out there. Students are being hired while people are losing, due to the COVID-19, there's certain sectors of employment where there's issues. Our students are being actively sought after. I mentioned Ms. Warbo, she's actively participating in connecting students with online job interviews that are resulting in hiring and students starting their jobs now before the end of the year. The teachers and the staff have embraced our continuity of education plan, which is again to their credit. The leadership and the input that we received here from Dr. Lutz and the other superintendents and the board has just been incredible during this really challenging situation we're all in. And, Steel Center has not been an afterthought at all on the part of our superintendents or the decisions that they're making. So we really, really appreciate that and the value you place on the learning that your kids from your districts are getting here. So I can't say enough about all those great efforts. Students are learning and they're earning certificates while they're at home from industry, not just, fluffy online activities, but actual tangible credentials within their industries using online resources like the American Welding Society and Barber-Code, which is a cosmetology industry partner, and Ford Motor Corporation. And I could go on, as you board members are aware, I can go on, but I just can't say enough about the great things that are happening. And relative to what we can be doing online for career and technical education students, I think the efforts are being maximized on the part of our teachers and the rest of the staff. So kudos to them. In your Joint Operating Committee brief, which you've had an opportunity to look at, I'm not going to read it, but I did want to make a couple highlights, such as the efforts. And also, we made a significant change in grading policy to ensure that we do no harm to students during this time. And, you know, they weren't easy changes to make, and our teachers and our staff are really exercising tremendous flexibility. But at the heart of it, we all know that there's students and families struggling through this time, and we don't want to add to the burden by having, you know, some rigid process of evaluating their participation. So they're being enriched, they're learning some new concepts, but they're being done so in a very favorable manner that's you know, nurturing them through this challenging period of time. And so that information was made available, and it's on our website for anyone to view. We are, just to draw a couple of other highlights to, I'm sorry. No, you know what, actually, you know, the last thing was our enrollment. Within our enrollment process, we are a little bit off schedule and a little bit behind the normal enrollment figures that we would expect this time of year, but our student services team and myself and others here are actively working on that. And also I wanted to underscore the announcement we made last week, which is we are absolutely going to do everything we can to make the end of the year and the movement to the next part of the life journey for our senior class as special as possible. Our virtual event actually began getting planned as a contingency the second or third week of this shutdown. Our advertising and design teacher, Mr. Scott Kane, and Mrs. Sam Brinkman, who works within that department, along with some other efforts. And I can't, you know, always mention everybody, but they're directly working on that project, and they're doing a fantastic job. And we have some other tricks up our sleeve to recognize and make the senior year as special as possible for Steel Center's class of 2020. So I know all of your districts are doing the same. Kudos to those efforts, and we're going to continue to try and do that here. So on Thursday, June the 4th, we're having a live stream event. This is our first live stream event. It won't be our last, but that is going to be our senior recognition ceremony, and a lot of really special things are happening there. And just lastly, I want to draw a thank you to Mrs. Maria Inks and some others that are helping to keep our social media information moving, recognizing our seniors and some other things that are happening within the Steel Center community and Steel Center family. And so, you know, check our website, check our social media, Facebook and Twitter, for those kinds of updates and sharing of information about the great things our students are doing, you know, under the leadership of their teachers and the rest of the staff here. So that's all the information I have in terms of information items. And again, the two assistant director reports are enclosed for your review.
Thank you. Could I please ask our solicitor the next item?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Rule. On the agenda at 14.1 is the election of the board treasurer. That is an event according to the school code and the updated bylaws for Steel Center that occurs in May. And the term of that treasurer's appointment is from July 1 to June 30th. Mr. Pantone is currently serving as treasurer for Steel Center. And at this time, I'd be glad to take a motion for the election of the treasurer.
This is David Scott. I nominate Mr. Pantone as to continue as treasurer of Steel Center.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Mr. Pantone, are you willing to so serve?
Yes.
Any comments or questions on this motion? Hearing none, roll call, please. Elaine, roll call, please.
Sorry, I had to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
It's raining and I'm in my patio room and it's a little loud, so I was trying to avoid all that noise. Mr. Pantone?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legeros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mrs. Rule.
Yes.
Thank
Motion
you for your
carries as
continued
stated.
support.
The next one,
The next item on our agenda is 14.2, the election of an assistant board treasurer. In the past, Skills Center has appointed the Allegheny Intermediate Unit as the assistant treasurer, and that's because of the important role in the fiscal operations of the school. So the floor is open for motions for assistant board treasurer.
This is David Scott. I nominate that we reappoint the AIU as Assistant Treasurer for Steel Center.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
questions or comments? Roll call.
Thank you.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legeros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rule.
Yes. Motion carries as stated. Thank you. I'd like to make just one comment now. Mr. Rice and I spoke this afternoon, and we both said that we are so proud that the students that we are training right now and that our offerings that they are taking are contributing to the essential workforce. And that was something that we hadn't given a real big thought to, but you know, they talk about all the essential workers and you look at the type of offerings we're giving and they just certainly fit into that. So we felt very good about that. The next meeting will be Tuesday, June 2nd. And maybe face-to-face by then, we hope. And is there a motion to adjourn?
This is David Scott. I make the motion to adjourn.
Second by Nick Alexandrov.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries as stated. We are adjourned. Thank you.
So now we will begin. I don't have a gavel. I should
I used the candle.
use the gavel. I don't want to break anything here in my dining room. But I'll call to order the May 5 meeting of the Southeast Area Special School District Joint Operating Committee. If we could have a roll call, Elaine, please.
Sure. Mr. Pantone,
Here.
Mr. Tashwire,
Here.
Mrs. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Stoffer,
Here.
Ms. Johnson, Mr. Perry,
Here.
Ms. Legeros,
Here.
Mrs. Downer,
Here.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here, we have a quorum. Are there any board member comments? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yep.
Okay. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and Dr. Dowell, I do want to tell you that the board certainly appreciates the work of our teachers in the Mon Valley, and especially the exceptional work they're doing this difficult time. I've seen some tweets from teachers doing things through for the school and for the students, and it's clear that that they have our students' best interests in heart, despite the exceptional circumstances they're operating under. So please express our thanks to them for the work that they do every day and are continuing to do during this pandemic.
We'll pass that on. Thank you.
Yes. That being said, we move on to minutes. I'm in need of a motion to approve the minutes from March 3, 2020.
Motion.
Second by Wayne Perry.
Motion by Mr. Alexandrov and seconded by Mr. Perry. Are there comments or corrections to that item? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to financial items. I need in need of a motion for approving items 5.1 through 5.3.
Motion.
Second by Wayne Perry.
We have a motion by Mr. Alexandrov, seconded by Mr. Perry. Are there comments and questions on that? Not, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
You're muted, Roger.
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes, that motion carries. Next, I'm in need of a motion to approve 5.4, the Southeast Area Special School District's administrative budget in the amount of $297,348.
Motion by Nick Alexandrov.
Second by Wayne Perry.
We have a motion by Mr. Alexandrov, a second by Mr. Perry. Are there any comments or questions on this motion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes. The motion carries. There's one item under principal's report. I'll read that, Dr. Dahl, before we go to your report, okay? That's to the virtual JOC meetings, the language allowing us to permit this and do it with regards to legal requirements. Do I have a motion to approve 6.1?
Motion to approve 6.1.
Second by Wayne Perry.
We have a motion by Mr. Alexandrov and a second by Mr. Perry. Are there comments or questions on this? I certainly appreciate all of your patience and dealing with virtual meetings. It's not a lot of fun, is it? If we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mr. Scott.
Yes, motion carries. So Dr. Dowell, under principal's report, could you give us just a little update on how the school is operating and how it's working with the students and the teachers and all the staff at Mon Valley?
I think just like all of your schools, everybody was in the same boat as far as very quickly having to build a platform to teach virtually on the fly. And I'm very proud of what staff-wise we came up with to do. So like I said, I will pass your message on to them, but I'm also very proud of what they've done and very appreciative of all their efforts. We're probably about 80% that we're touching virtually. We got about another 20% that we're sending paper packets home to, for either a lack of tech or an ability to do the technology piece, but they're doing fantastic work. They're doing fantastic work.
That's good to hear. Thank you. We move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Hall.
Can I make one further comment?
Yes.
Typically in the April board meeting, the board approves a stipend for the yearbook.
we are not going to publish, I don't think, a bound yearbook this year. We're going to do a virtual one. So I want to say thank you for the stipend, but I don't think we're going to ask for it for this year.
Well, out of any years to have a virtual yearbook, I think this is the one.
This is the one. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Hall, under buildings and grounds, we have some things that are similar with to Steel Center.
Right, yeah. The only other thing I would have to report down there, because there hasn't been much going on down there in the last month. The condensate pumps were put in and they're working just fine. The other thing was ground effects, the company that they contracted with to do the hillside, to cut the grass, let me know the other day that that contract expires this year. And I kind of told them I don't know anything. I don't know who's responsible for putting that contract out. So I'll leave that up to Rich to get in touch with me, whether we have to bid it or what we do with that.
So in the past, and I think it was a 3-year contract that we've always done with them. They've always been extremely, extremely cheap. I don't know if we need to go out to bid. Is it $1,600 for the year or something like that to cut the hillside 4 times?
Oh, not even that.
Well, it's very inexpensive, and I don't know how the board wants to go with that. It wasn't something typically I put out, but I'm happy to do that if you want me to.
Lisa, could you answer that? I think it was $225 a cut, and they only do 3 or 4 cuts a year, so it's under $1,000 for the entire service contract.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Scott. Lisa Colati, just wanted to let you know that a contract of that amount does not need to go out to bid, nor is it legally required to get 3 quotes. If you're satisfied with this service provider and it's a small service, the board may, if it wishes, just speak with the current contractor and pursue a renewal.
I would suggest that we proceed that way. I remember in the past when we have gone out for quotes, they were cheaper by a factor of 3 to 6 compared to some of the other people that offered bids. So if we're fine going forward with that, would that be Dr. Dowell be in touch with them, or would that be you, Mr. Hall?
Either one. I could, like I said, I didn't know who handled that before. And I just told them I would bring it up at the board meeting to find out what was going on.
If you've been in, Mr. Hall, if you've been in contact with them, if you could ask them to submit a contract for an extension of 3 years, I think that would cover us for another period of time going forward.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I don't believe there's an architect's report. AIU, we have Dr. Palmero here. Would you like to give a report for the AIU?
Yes, I would be very happy to. With regard to everything all schools are facing during the COVID-19 pandemic and the mandatory school closure, we're particularly proud of the service delivery models that we have been able to utilize quickly and rapidly to support our students who are enrolled in our AIU3 operated special education schools. In particular, I want to echo your acknowledgement that the teaching staff and administration at Mon Valley have risen to the occasion. They are providing instruction to students that is at times virtual and synchronous in real time, asynchronous and electronically available, as well as providing telephonic supports for students and family members. And for students and families who are struggling with access to the technologies necessary for remote learning, they're printing weekly learning packets that are being sent home to students. The teachers are very mindful of addressing FAPE, free and appropriate public education for the students with disabilities, and are ensuring that what we are providing is appropriate and reasonable new instruction for students not instruction that is based on simply review or enrichment of concepts previously taught. The additional priority that has been adopted across the whole of the staff has been placed on the adherence to IEP mandated and compliance-driven timelines. So in other words, all staff have been actively involved in administering the following: IEP team meetings, or their role in the IEP team meetings, every bit as much as conducting ERs and RRs, to best ensure that our member LEAs are not being compromised by the lack of attending to those timelines. I am very pleased to also discuss that much thought and emphasis has been put on planning for ESY services that will be made available this summer, most likely to be remote as well. And in amongst all these technical issues that I may be talking about regarding the education of students with disabilities, we can't forget the importance of maintaining a connection socially and emotionally to support our learners. And I'm going to throw it back to Rich, because I really do think that you should take a moment and talk about some of the other types of programming that is taking place to support students. And by way of example, can you spend just a moment highlighting the virtual prom that Mon Valley hosted last Friday?
So Friday night we had prom. We did it via Zoom conference, just like this. Typically a prom for us is about 80 to 100 people. And if you've been in Zoom, that is way too unwieldy. So we kept it to the graduating class and then next year's graduating class. So we had about 15 kids and about 4 staff, and then some other staff that kind of popped in and out. But it was, I think they had a really good time. One of the things that we keep hearing from parents and from our kids is they miss being able to see each other. And with the way we're spread out geographically, with, I have 37 different districts that come to me, anything from North Allegheny all the way down to Laurel Highlands, friends aren't neighborhood friends. It's not like you can cross the street in Brentwood and see your friends. So this was one of the few opportunities they've had to socialize together in a group like that. And feedback was really good. I think they all had a very good time. They had a very good time.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Anything else, Dr. Palmero?
No, I just look forward to taking next steps with the administration and team as we continue to navigate what the remaining few weeks of school will bring us, and planning for the summer and what's around the corner with the advent of the 2021 school year. One thing is for certain, change is predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you win the award for the Cinco de Mayo decorations with the hanging lanterns on your ceiling.
Unfortunately,
I don't think anyone else put any effort into that.
My
I'm not sure that's fair.
margarita will follow the board meeting.
Indeed.
We've been watching or Dr. Palmero for weeks, and I'm not sure those decorations have changed. So I'm not sure that it's all about Cinco de Mayo right there. But
well, maybe every day is Cinco de Mayo.
I never take
I heard they were up year round.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you. Dr. Lutz, any superintendent of record report?
Just briefly, yeah, sure. They do say that these Zoom meetings give the insight into our worlds as to what makes us tick at home. So we can always see what life is like behind us and on the walls behind us and where we're at. So I just would like to give a shout out to, I know it's Teacher Appreciation Week, month, but also just thinking about the general, just the teachers as well as the staff. with Dave and your team, Rich and your team down at the building. Thank you for all that you've been doing. I know I've not been all that connected in the past 5 or 6 weeks just because of all of the things happening. But thank you for not missing a beat, keeping the building moving forward, getting ready for summer prep. And so we'll continue to work on the things that we need to work on. But just thank you for your work. And I was on campus today. Campus looks beautiful, and I know, grass is growing, everything's turning green, and I wish kids were there, but they're not. But we'll be ready when they come back to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lutz. Solicitor's report.
No further report. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Okay. Under other business, we are in need of election of a board treasurer and assistant board treasurer. Lisa, would you facilitate that, please?
Certainly. Just as we did at Steel Center, this is the time of year when the treasurer is elected for a term beginning July 1 to June 30th, and the same with the assistant board treasurer. This past year, Mr. Perry's been kind enough to be the treasurer, and the Allegheny Intermediate Unit has been the assistant treasurer. So at this time, I'd be glad to take a motion for board treasurer.
Motion by Nick Alexandrov.
For Mr. Perry?
I'd second that motion, Dave.
And that's to appoint Mr. Perry, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Perry, you willing to serve?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Mrs. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
Mr. Scoff.
Yes. The motion carries.
Next item is 13.2. I'd like a motion to appoint an assistant board treasurer. IU is currently serving in that role. Motion.
Motion by Nick Alexandrov.
For the IU.
Second.
All right. So a
Second
motion by
Wayne
Mr.
Perry.
Alexandrov and seconded by Mr. Wayne Perry to appoint the AIU as the assistant treasurer for our joint operating committee.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Pantone,
Yes.
Mr. Tashwire,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Legaros,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandrov,
Yes.
and Mr. Scott.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We then move on to visitor comments. We have two visitors who are both employees. I'm not sure if they wish to say anything, but if they do, they can unmute themselves and say it. Before we adjourn, I do want to thank you for allowing us to meet this way. I really miss, I hate to say how much I miss meetings in person, really. I mean, these Zoom things can be really frustrating at times, but it's important to keep the business of our districts moving and keeping things going along. So I do appreciate your continued work in doing this, and look forward to sometime, somewhere, someday meeting again in person to be able to do this. I'm not sure when that will be. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 2nd, Tuesday, June 2nd, and you'll be notified whether that will be in person or by Zoom prior to the meeting. And hopefully we'll all have even more experience, but with Zoom by that point, with all your work on your virtual background, so that we can have a little more interesting gallery view when we're going forward. If there being nothing else, I need of a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Alexandrov,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Perry. Are there any comments or questions or discussion on this item to adjourn tonight's meeting? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to adjourning tonight's meeting? I didn't think so.
Thank
All
you
right,
for
the
hanging in
meeting
there
is
with us
adjourned.
tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Stay safe,
Dave.
everybody.
Thanks for
Yes.
hanging in there with us tonight with operating the meeting on the platform.
I think it worked as well as it could possibly have worked. So thank you so much, everyone. You all have a great night.
Good night.
You too,
Good
Dave.
night.
Good night, everybody.